My dad and stepmom changed the locks on my own house to try and hand it over to my pregnant stepsister, but when I stood my ground, everything they feared came crashing down. I'm 28 now, single, and I live in the house my mom left to me after she passed away 5 years ago. It's a simple 3-bedroom place in a quiet little neighborhood, not fancy by any means, but it's cozy and mine. What really matters is that it came from my mom. She spent her life working to make sure I'd have something stable, and after she died, she made it clear that this house was meant to be my anchor. It's more than just walls and a roof, it's her memory, her effort, her love. Growing up, she was the only parent I could count on. No, she wasn't flawless, but she showed up, every time. My dad. He pretty much tapped out after the divorce. He got remarried not long after, and let's just say his focus shifted fast. His new wife became his whole world, and her daughter, let's call her Brielle, got treated like some kind of princess. Brielle's 25 now and expecting a baby. Now, I've got no issue with her being pregnant, that's not what this is about. The real problem is that she's the kind of person who acts like life owes her something. And honestly, her mom and my dad have been feeding that mindset since we were kids. Brielle's used to getting whatever she wants. A new car. Done. Fancy vacations. No problem. Random luxuries just because she felt like it. You bet. They've always bent over backwards to make sure she's happy. Total, I want it, so I get it, energy. I've kept my distance from that circus. I see my dad occasionally, but I've made it pretty clear, I value my space. This house is my little bubble where I can just live my life without anyone trying to control it. I've got a solid job, a few close friends, and a nice, steady routine. I'm not rich, but I've got my feet under me, and that's more than some can say in this economy. Right now, it's just me and the house, and I honestly wouldn't have it any other way. No roommates, no chaos, just peace. It's exactly what I needed after losing my mom. But let's get back to Brielle. A few months ago, her boyfriend, some guy named Chase, ditched her. And truthfully, I saw that coming from day one. He gave off the kind of vibe that bolts when things start getting real. But Brielle didn't seem too heartbroken over it. Word is, she ran straight home to her mom and my dad, and they immediately wrapped her in cotton candy again. Cooking for her, buying her all the baby stuff, treating her like she was made of porcelain. At first, I brushed it off. That's their home, their lives, not my business. But then out of the blue, I get a call from my dad. Says he needs to talk, which was already weird, he doesn't usually do heart-to-hearts. So I head over to their place, and the moment I walk in, I can tell something's brewing. My dad and his wife are sitting at the kitchen table, and there's Brielle too, hands on her belly like a walking reminder that she's pregnant. They start with some awkward chit-chat, just enough to make it obvious they're stalling. My dad asks how work's going, his wife nods like she actually cares, but it doesn't take long before they dive into the real reason I'm there. My dad starts laying it out, Brielle needs a stable place to stay since their house is feeling a little tight with a baby on the way. And before I can even open my mouth, his wife jumps in, sounding sweet, but sharp enough to cut steel. She says, well, since you're living alone in that big house, and you're not married or anything, it just makes sense for Brielle to move in. She needs room for the baby, and you're not exactly settled down. Then she adds that I could easily downsize into something smaller and more manageable. It wasn't a question. They weren't asking, they were telling. Like they'd already made the decision and were just waiting for me to play along. My dad even had the nerve to say they'd looked into some apartment options for me, as if that made this whole thing less insane. I was floored. They were basically saying my life didn't matter, that my house, the one my mom left me, was just some extra space they could hand over like it was nothing. The entitlement was mind-blowing. Like just because I wasn't married or raising kids, my home somehow didn't count. For a second, I thought I must have misunderstood. Who even says stuff like that out loud? But no, They were absolutely serious. Apparently, this had been their plan for a while. They were just waiting for the right time to spring it on me. I didn't hesitate, I told them flat out, no. This house isn't some piece of property I'm casually holding on to. It's my home. It's the last real connection I have to my mom, and I'm not handing it over. Especially not for Brielle. I tried to make that clear, but it was like shouting into the wind. They kept hammering the same points: family should help family, I don't need that much space, I don't have a wife or kids. Nothing I said got through. Brielle barely spoke, but the look on her face said plenty. That smug little smile told me she was sure they'd wear me down, like always. That's how things go for her, people give in, and she gets her way. At one point, I looked right at her and said, Brielle, do you seriously want to live in my house? I mean, really? This is my space, my sanctuary. You already looked into apartments, why not take one of those? You've done the research. She just blinked at me like it never even crossed her mind that she should be the one to compromise. Then her mom stepped in with that sickly sweet tone and said, oh honey, you just don't understand. Brielle needs stability. An apartment wouldn't give her the comfort and space she needs for the baby. I let out a bitter laugh. So my peace doesn't matter. My comfort isn't important. You've got to be kidding me. You walk in here, acting like I'm supposed to just give up my life because Brielle's having a baby, and you really expect me to just smile and nod? Brielle didn't even blink. She just sat there with her arms crossed, that smug little smirk still glued to her face, like she'd already won and didn't need to lift a finger. She didn't say a word, just let her mom and my dad do all the talking, all the convincing, like she was too good to bother. She didn't think she had to explain herself. In her mind, this wasn't a question, it was already happening. Her mom jumped back in, voice sharp and dripping with condescension. This isn't about your comfort, she said, like I'd asked for something unreasonable. It's about what's best for the family. Brielle's about to bring a child into the world. Isn't that just a little more important than your need for extra space? You're a grown man, you don't need a big house all to yourself. She really said that, with a straight face. It's selfish, she added, to hold on to something that could help give Brielle and her baby a better future. I just stared at her, stunned that she had the guts to call me selfish. Are you serious? I thought. You think I'm selfish for wanting to keep the home my mom worked her whole life to give me? This isn't just a building to me. It's where I've built my life. It's where I still feel close to my mom. And here you are telling me I should just hand it over like it's no big deal. Then my dad chimed in with a tired sigh, like he was trying to smooth things over. We're not saying you have to give it up permanently, he said, like that somehow made it acceptable. Just think of it as helping Brielle out for now. Once she's settled, she can move on, and you'll figure something else out. Oh, so now I'm just supposed to figure something else out with my life? This isn't about what's best for everyone, I snapped. This is about what's best for Brielle. Let's not pretend otherwise. They could talk all they wanted about doing what's right for the family, but I saw through it. This was just another one of their stunts to make everything revolve around Brielle. And I was done playing along. Brielle's mom narrowed her eyes and shot back, it's called being part of a family. Sometimes you make sacrifices for the greater good. If your mother were still alive, she'd. That's when I cut her off. My voice went ice cold. Don't you dare bring my mom into this. She left this house to me because she trusted I'd protect it. She knew exactly how you people would act, and that's why none of you are mentioned in her will. So don't sit there pretending you know what she would have wanted, because you don't. That shut them up. My dad suddenly got real quiet and wandered off like he had something else to do. Brielle kept that smug look on her face, like none of it mattered, arms still folded like she had all the time in the world to wait me out. She didn't argue. Didn't defend herself. She didn't have to, at least not in her mind. She thought she was above it all. That it wasn't a matter of if they'd get my house, but when. But not this time. They were messing with the wrong guy. My mom trusted me with this place, and I wasn't about to let them guilt me into giving it up. Still, I could tell they weren't done trying. They left that conversation like it was unfinished business, like they were giving me time to come around. But I wasn't budging. I figured maybe they'd take the hint after I shut them down so clearly. Turns out, that was just round one. My dad and his wife seemed to think if they kept bringing it up, eventually I'd cave. They started with these subtle little jabs. My dad would call and toss in things like, "You had any more thoughts about helping out?" like I was just being slow to agree. His wife started sending me links to articles about the importance of supporting single moms, like reading one of them would magically change my mind and I'd hand over my keys. Brielle, meanwhile, stayed silent, but you could tell she was confident they'd take care of everything for her. Then they stepped it up a notch. They began showing up without warning. Not to say hi. Not to visit. Every time they dropped by, they had some reason to bring the conversation back to Brielle and her situation. One time, my dad pulled up with a box of baby clothes. Walked right in like it was completely normal and asked me where he should store them. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "You can take those right back to your place." He gave me a look like I'd just spit on him. "It's just temporary," he said. "You're not even using the guest room." I told him, plain and simple, that room's for guests, not storage. He huffed, clearly annoyed, but finally took the box back to his car. And that set the tone from there on out. Every visit, every conversation, they'd float another idea that involved me giving something up. And every time, I shut it down. But I could see it in their eyes, they didn't think of me as the real owner of the house. To them, it was like I was just babysitting it for Brielle until she needed it. Like I didn't really earn it, so it wasn't really mine. And the way they twisted it, like I was being cruel or selfish for saying no, it drove me nuts. They made it sound like I was hoarding space just to be spiteful. I'd said no. Multiple times. But it didn't matter. They wanted a yes, and anything less meant I was the bad guy. Then Brielle decided to get more involved. One afternoon, she showed up out of nowhere, popped open her trunk, and asked if I could help her unload a stroller. I just stared at her like she was out of her mind. "Why are you bringing that here?" I asked. She gave me this dead serious look and said, "Well, I don't have the room right now." Where else am I supposed to put it? I could barely believe what I was hearing. "That's not my problem," I told her, already feeling my blood start to boil. Of course, that set her off. She launched into some over-the-top rant, whining about how I was making things so much harder than they needed to be, like I was personally responsible for her entire mess. "Family's supposed to stick together," she said, like that was some kind of magic phrase that would make her mess my responsibility. Then she kept going, "You don't understand how stressful this is, being in my position." She said it like I was too dense to get how life really works. Now, she wasn't wrong about one thing, I've never been pregnant, sure. But I do know a thing or two about handling my own life without expecting everyone else to clean up after me. I've got responsibilities too. The difference is, I've been dealing with mine like an adult. I don't go marching into other people's homes, acting like I'm entitled to their space just because I didn't plan ahead. So I looked her dead in the eye and told her, plain as day, "Your problems aren't mine to solve. And I'm not about to flip my life upside down just because you refuse to figure out yours." Yeah, that didn't sit well. Her face twisted up like I'd just told her the earth revolved around the sun for the first time. Pure fury. She turned and stormed off, but not before hurling one last dramatic threat over her shoulder, "You're gonna regret this someday." The irony? It wasn't lost on me. Here was someone who's been spoiled her entire life, handed everything, shielded from consequences, and now, for the first time, someone told her no. And she just couldn't handle it. She didn't stop to consider how absurd her demands were. No, in her mind I was the unreasonable one, for not letting her dump a stroller at my front door like the place was hers already. She honestly acted like my home was hers by default, and I was just some speed bump in the way. But that wasn't the end of it. Not even close. A few days later, my dad showed up, with a realtor. Didn't call ahead. Just knocked on my front door like he owned the place. I open it, and there he is, standing next to some woman holding a clipboard. I thought we could look at some options for you, he says, like he's doing me a favor. I didn't even let them step inside. I told them both to turn around and leave. Then I slammed the door. That right there. That was the final straw. I realized I couldn't trust any of them. This wasn't just about the house anymore, it was about principle. They thought they could strong-arm me into giving in, like they always do for Brielle. But I'm not her, and I don't fold under pressure. That same night, I got on the phone with a security company and arranged to have cameras installed around the property. It wasn't a huge move, but it was something. A way to start protecting what's mine. I didn't feel safe anymore, not because of crime or strangers, but because my own family was trying to back me into a corner. I was terrified they might pull something shady to get me out of the house. Something legal, or close enough to fake it. So I made up my mind, I'd be the wall they couldn't push over. I wasn't going to argue anymore. I wasn't going to explain or justify. I was done. This house wasn't on the table, and I wasn't entertaining any more ideas. And just like I suspected, they came up with something new. Something worse. I came home from work one night, drained but glad to be back in my own space, only to find my key no longer fit in the lock. At first, I thought maybe I'd grabbed the wrong key by mistake. I tried it again. Nothing. Then I saw it, a folded-up note taped to the door. We've changed the locks for safety. Please contact us to discuss this. Signed by my dad. The rage hit me like a freight train. I didn't wait. I called him on the spot. He picked up after a few rings, sounding casual, like he hadn't just crossed the line into complete insanity. What the hell is going on? I said, my voice barely holding steady. Why can't I get into my house? It's only temporary, he said, like that made any of this better. We were just trying to help Brielle. You've been so difficult, and we thought this might be the smoothest way to move forward. Smooth for who? I snapped. You and Brielle. You've crossed a serious line. This is my home. What you're doing is illegal. If you think I'm letting this slide, you've lost your damn mind. His voice changed real quick. He went from calm to pleading in seconds. Please don't call the police. Don't make this a big thing, it'll look bad for the family. Oh, now you care how it looks. I shot back. That's not my problem. Here's what's gonna happen, you're going to call whoever changed those locks and fix it. Today. Or I'm calling the cops and pressing charges for trespassing and attempted theft. There was a pause on the other end. I could almost hear him trying to decide if I was serious. He must have realized I was done playing nice, because his voice softened even more. Okay, we'll change it back. But you're being unreasonable. We're just trying to make things easier for Brielle and the baby. This was always meant to be temporary. I cut him off. You've got until the end of the day. That's it. If I'm not back in my house by then, the police will be involved. That's not up for discussion. After a few more half-hearted excuses, he finally agreed. I hung up without another word, my hands shaking with fury. This wasn't just another guilt trip, this was a deliberate move to take what wasn't theirs. They broke my trust. They violated my space. They crossed a line they couldn't uncross. A few hours later, the locksmith came back and reversed whatever they'd done. My dad didn't show up. Neither did Brielle or her mom. I stood at the door the entire time, arms crossed, watching every single move the guy made. Once it was all fixed, I walked back inside and dropped onto the couch, staring at the walls of the home that had suddenly turned into a war zone. This wasn't just another argument anymore. This was a full-blown attack on my life and my rights. And I knew, in my gut, that it wasn't over. If they were bold enough to pull something like this, who knew what else they had planned? But one thing was for sure, if they thought I'd roll over and let them win, they picked the wrong guy to mess with. That night, I stayed up late, digging through old documents, making calls, and double-checking every detail I could. I needed to be absolutely sure there was no way they could pull a stunt like that again. But what really stuck with me wasn't just what they did, it was how casually they acted, like it was totally normal. They really believed they had a right to my house. Didn't matter that it was left to me in my mom's will or that I'd been living there for years. To them, it was just a property, something they could take if they wanted it bad enough. So I started taking steps toward legal action. I sat down with my lawyer and told him everything, how my dad and stepmom had been non-stop with the pressure, how they changed the locks behind my back. He listened carefully, asked all the right questions, about the deed, the will, anything strange my dad had done recently. At first, I figured he was just being thorough, like any good attorney would be. But then he leaned back in his chair, gave me this serious look, and said, "I need to tell you something." He told me my dad had already asked about contesting my mom's will. That hit me like a brick. "What do you mean, contesting it?" "When?" "Months ago," he said. He hadn't filed anything, but apparently, my dad had already talked to a lawyer about trying to argue that the house should be considered family property instead of something I inherited. He was fishing for any loophole to take control of it. I sat there in complete disbelief. While he was pretending to be neutral, or even supportive, he was actually planning to take the house from me behind the scenes. This wasn't some half-baked idea cooked up last week by my stepmom. They'd been working on this for months. Long before the guilt trip started. Long before they tried sweet-talking me into moving out. My lawyer jumped in quickly, probably noticing the look on my face. "He doesn't have a strong case," he said. "Your mom's will is clear, and it names you directly. But the fact that he even considered challenging it, that says everything you need to know. It wasn't just betrayal. It was cold, calculated. My dad had been scheming to take the one thing my mom left me while playing the part of the concerned parent. Every time he acted like this was about helping the family, it was really just about taking what wasn't his. Suddenly, all the manipulation, the pressure, the phony concern, it all clicked. This wasn't about Brielle needing a roof over her head. This was about control. I felt my anger bubble over. This wasn't just about standing up for myself anymore. This was about honoring my mom. This house, her house, was something she worked her entire life to give me. And every time they tried to rip it away, it felt like they were spitting on her memory. So I made a promise to myself, no matter what they pulled next, I wasn't backing down. This house is mine, and they're not taking it. After what I'd learned from my lawyer, I spent that whole night replaying every single interaction I'd had with my dad over the past few months. All of it. The fake concern, the sudden interest in my future, the guilt trips, it all added up. I realized if I was going to move forward legally, I needed to confront him directly. No texts. No calls. Just face to face. So I drove over to his place and knocked on the door, just like he and his wife had done to me over and over. When he opened it, he looked caught off guard, but not guilty. That's what stung the most. Not even a hint of shame. "I need to know why you were looking into contesting Mom's will," I said, getting straight to the point. His expression twisted, somewhere between fake confusion and offense. "What are you talking about?" he said, trying to play dumb. "I don't know who told you that, but it's not true. Don't lie to me," I snapped. "I already know you talked to a lawyer about it months ago. So let's cut the crap. What was the plan?" He stammered for a second. It's not like that, he said. I wasn't trying to take anything, I just wanted to explore if there were any options that might help the family. The family? I repeated, my voice sharp. Let's call it what it is. This isn't about the family, it's about Brielle. You were trying to take the one thing Mom left me, and you expect me to be okay with that? I wasn't planning anything, he said louder, getting defensive. I was just considering the possibilities. That house is too big for you anyway. Brielle needs a place to raise the baby. So that means stealing mine. I shot back, my frustration boiling over. You didn't ask for help, you tried to steal. You went behind my back and schemed, and now you want to make it sound like you were doing me a favor. It wasn't like that, he muttered again. But he couldn't look me in the eye. His eyes darted everywhere, at the floor, at the wall, anywhere but my face. I waited to see if he'd own up to it. If there was any part of him left that might admit he was wrong. But he said nothing. I shook my head and turned to walk away. There was no use arguing with someone who couldn't even admit the truth to himself. That moment confirmed everything I already suspected, I couldn't trust him. Not even a little. He wasn't acting like a father. He was acting like someone who thought my life, my home, my choices, were his to manage. Like I was just some roadblock in his plan. When I got home, I called my lawyer again and filled him in on how it went. He reminded me that the will was rock solid. My dad didn't have a legal foot to stand on. Still, we both knew this fight wasn't just going to be legal, it was psychological. They were trying to wear me down. Chip away at my energy and willpower until I just gave in out of exhaustion. So I doubled down. The next few weeks were a whirlwind, meetings, paperwork, legal filings. I made sure the title was locked down in my name and that there were no weak spots or legal cracks they could crawl through. I wasn't just defending my house anymore. I was protecting my mom's legacy. I upgraded the entire security setup, added more cameras, locked down every entry point, and even got in touch with a title protection agency to keep tabs on anything suspicious. It honestly felt like I was prepping for a siege, like some medieval lord guarding his castle, and truthfully, that's exactly what it was. Brielle, on the other hand, decided to escalate things. She began posting these vague, dramatic rants on social media about being betrayed by family and standing up for what's right. She never mentioned my name outright, but anyone who knew the situation could read between the lines. Pretty soon, people we both knew started messaging me, trying to get the scoop or see if there was any way to patch things up. I kept my replies short and straight to the point. I wasn't about to get sucked into her pity party or explain my side just to feed the gossip mill. But as time passed, their attempts to stir things up slowly fizzled out. Her side was drowning in legal bills, and my attorney reassured me they'd run out of steam sooner rather than later. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't truly over. Folks like them don't just quit, they regroup, shift gears, and come back swinging when you least expect it. By the time the dust finally settled, I was completely worn out. Defending my home, my sanity, and my boundaries had drained me, but it was all worth it. This fight wasn't just about property, it was about finally standing my ground and not letting anyone bulldoze over me again. My dad and Brielle thought they could guilt-trip me into caving, but they seriously underestimated me. If anything, this whole nightmare just showed me how far they'd go to manipulate and control me. And honestly, I'm starting to believe the only real way forward is cutting them off for good. Things are quiet for now, but I'm not stupid. After trying every trick in the book to get me out, they eventually backed off. Days turned into weeks, then months, and all of a sudden, radio silence. No texts, no calls, no surprise visits from Brielle or her mother. The quiet was unsettling, almost like they were regrouping behind the scenes, but I wasn't about to question the peace. During that lull, Brielle had her baby. A healthy boy, from what I heard through the grapevine. I figured maybe motherhood was keeping her occupied, or maybe, just maybe, they were finally done with the drama. Then one night, late in the evening, I heard a knock at the door. I checked the cameras, and there they were, my dad, his wife, and Brielle, lined up like they were about to stage some kind of family intervention. I thought about ignoring them. I really did. But curiosity got the better of me, and I opened the door, mostly just to hear what kind of spin they were putting on things this time. As soon as the door swung open, my dad's wife launched into her usual speech. She said they'd been reflecting on everything and wanted to move forward as a family. She threw out all the classic lines, about forgiveness, about letting the past stay in the past, and said this was my final opportunity to make things right. Then Brielle chimed in, holding her baby like some emotional prop. She talked about how rough things had been, how she wanted her child surrounded by family, and how I still had a chance to do the right thing if I just opened my heart. Same manipulative script, just dressed up in a new costume. My dad, as always, tried to play peacemaker. He gave the whole "family matters more than stuff" speech and urged me to think about the bigger picture. I let them talk. Honestly, I was kind of curious how far they'd go this time. But when they finally stopped, I took a breath and gave it to them straight. I said, "This is my house. My mother left it to me, and I'm not giving it up. I've told you that before, and nothing's changed. I don't care what you've rehearsed or how pretty you're trying to make this sound, it's still a no." That should have been the end of it. But of course, it wasn't. Brielle's mom lost it. She started yelling, accusing me of being selfish, saying I was putting material things above family, and that I was failing in some imaginary duty. She tossed out every guilt trip she could think of, doing everything in her power to paint me as the bad guy. Then Brielle jumped in, sticking to her same tired script, crying about how I was ruining her life and abandoning her and the baby in their moment of need. She even pulled the old "you'll regret this one day" line, like I'd someday look back and wish I'd let them steamroll me. And my dad? He didn't say much. Just stood there, silently watching the whole circus unfold. He didn't try to step in. Didn't try to calm anyone down. Just stood there, like he'd already picked a side, and it wasn't mine. He looked lost, like the words just weren't coming to him anymore. And maybe, just maybe, a part of him finally understood how far things had gone. But I wasn't about to get pulled into another pointless back and forth. They had already crossed every single line, and I was done wasting my breath. I told them straight, "You've stomped all over my boundaries. You've lied, manipulated, tried to take what's mine, and now you show up here playing the victims. I'm over it. Leave my property," I said. But of course, they didn't move an inch. Brielle's mom kept pushing, claiming I was being unreasonable, trying to twist things around to make me feel guilty for standing firm. Brielle tossed in her usual remarks, how family should always be there for each other, how heartless I was for turning my back when she needed me most. Eventually, my dad spoke up, but it was the same tired plea, asking me to be reasonable, to try and see things from their point of view. I didn't say a word. What was the point? I'd said all I needed to. So I turned around, walked back inside, and locked the door behind me. I was finished playing their games. If they wanted to keep pushing, then they'd have to deal with the consequences. Once I was inside, I picked up the phone and called the police. I wasn't bluffing, and I needed them to know that. I explained everything to the dispatcher, who said an officer would be on their way soon. While I waited, I kept an eye on them through the window. They were still standing in my driveway, chatting like this was some casual visit. By the time the cops arrived, they'd finally stepped away from the porch, but they weren't going anywhere. I watched as the officers spoke to them, looked like they weren't buying any of the excuses being thrown around. The police made it crystal clear, "Leave now, and don't come back." Watching them finally walk off under police supervision gave me a small sense of relief, like I'd won a battle. But it also came with a sharp sting of finality. Whatever fragile thread of a relationship I had with my dad, it snapped right there. When I finally sat down, it hit me just how drained I really was. They hadn't just taken up my time or sapped my energy. They'd stolen the peace I used to feel in my own home. Even so, I knew I'd done the right thing. Drawing the line wasn't just a choice, it was something I had to do to protect myself. That night, I made it official. I wasn't just finished with the house drama, I was finished with them. I blocked their numbers. Unfollowed and removed them from every social media platform. And I told mutual friends that I didn't want updates, no messages passed along, no check-ins. Cutting them off wasn't easy. At first, it felt harsh. But once I looked back on everything, every manipulation, every lie, I realized there was nothing left worth holding on to. They didn't care about me. They never did. They only cared about what I could give them. So I shifted my focus to the people who actually showed up for me, my friends. The ones who stood by me through all the chaos. The ones who reminded me that I wasn't crazy for standing my ground. One of them even suggested I throw a housewarming party, not because the house was new, but because I fought like hell to keep it. The idea made me laugh, but honestly, it felt right. So I did. Just a small group of close friends, nothing fancy. And it turned out perfect. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was truly happy. I wasn't just surviving, I was actually living. Looking back, I'm proud of how I handled everything. It wasn't smooth, and yeah, there were moments when I wanted to walk away from it all. But I didn't. I stood my ground. And I proved to myself that I'm stronger than I ever gave myself credit for. This house. It's not just where I sleep, it's a symbol of everything I've endured and overcome. It stands for my freedom, my resilience, and the strength it took to say, no more. If there's one lesson I've taken from all of this, it's that family isn't just about blood. It's about respect, about trust, about mutual support. And if someone isn't willing to give you those things, then they don't get a place in your life, no matter what their last name is. So, if you're going through something like this, let me say it loud and clear, stand your ground. Don't let anyone shame you into giving up your peace. You don't owe your happiness to anyone. You don't owe your safety, your comfort, or your stability to anyone who doesn't value you. I've moved on now. I still live in this house, and every single time I walk through that front door, I'm reminded of what I stood up for. This isn't just where I live, it's my home. And I'm never letting anyone take that away from me.